Chapter 1940. Departure from the Island. Chapter 1940. Departure from the island. Many virtuosos hailing from various continents gathered after the Eastern Deity Island trial ended in the Punglai Deity region. Many virtuosos did not leave straight away. All the practitioners gained something from this journey, and several people obtained huge benefits. Of course, none of them could compare to Yi Futian. After all, Yi Futian obtained the source of a relic of the Great Path. Furthermore, this was only one of the few relics of the Great Path that Yi Futian had taken for himself. He did not even touch the vast majority of relics. Nonetheless, everyone had their own chance meetings and benefits gained. After they departed from the Eastern Deity Island, the Punglai Deity region became even busier, and trades became even more common. Apart from this, many people were exchanging stories and discussing the Eastern Deity Island's gossip and what happened there. For example, some rumors said that among the people who entered the Eastern Deity Island, one of them was a mysterious virtuoso from the ancient royal family, the Jiang clan. To most of the practitioners who went to the Eastern Deity Island, the ancient royal family was an unrelatable entity. Thus, many people were quite surprised that the Eastern Deity Island had actually managed to attract the ancient royal family's virtuosos. However, the person that attracted the most attention this time was not the virtuosos from the ancient royal family, the Jiang clan. Rather, that person was a Ran Huang who was apparently the pavilion master of the Dongyuan Pavilion, Yi Liunian. This person performed outstandingly well in the Eastern Deity Island. He managed to obtain relics of the Great Path consecutively and killed many Renhuangs. And his methods were callous and cold. What really made people afraid of him was that he had slain nearly all the virtuosos from the Jun family, one of the top-tier factions in the Punglai continent. Moreover, he completely crippled Jun Qiuyan's cultivation. This event had already made its way around the Punglai Deity region, and the practitioners of the Punglai continent had also dispatched virtuosos to this place. In this Punglai Deity region, virtuosos of the Jun family could be found everywhere. As long as the Dongyuan Pavilion master came out, the only fate that awaited him was death. However, it was said that the Dongyuan Pavilion master had been regarded as an important figure by the Eastern Deity Island, and had entered the island to cultivate. At the same time, there was another rumor that was spreading through the Punglai Deity region. The rumor said that when the Eastern Deity Island initially opened, a mysterious virtuoso caused the flowering tree to blossom to its full glory. However, no one knew who this person was. Some people thought it was a phenomenon caused by the tree itself, while others believed that someone was intentionally hiding his identity. Many people guessed that the practitioner who caused such an extraordinary reaction in the tree was none other than the Dongyuan Pavilion master Yi Liunian. This person's performance in the Eastern Deity Island was far too outstanding. He managed to obtain opportunities of the Great Path, and he entered the Eastern Deity Island with a record low loss of 0 helpers. No one could compare to him. It was also said that after that, he returned to Wudong Island and took away the divine fire of Wudong. However, this was merely a rumor, and many people did not know how true it was. No matter the factual accuracies of these rumors, it was undisputed that the person who caught the most attention during this journey in the Eastern Deity Island was the Dongyuan Pavilion master, the one who could escape the incessant murderous pursuit of Jun Qiuyan, only due to Bai Mu's assistance. In the Punglai Deity region, many silhouettes flashed by. Some were walking on the ground, while in the skies above, others were walking in midair. At that moment, another overpowering aura washed over from the space above. All the virtuosos raised their heads and saw a group of darkly clothed virtuosos traversing in the air above them. This caused quite a flurry among the crowd. That group was an entire army of Renhuangs. "Are they Jun family virtuosos?" someone asked. "Nope." In the crowd, someone had a quizzical expression in their eyes. He continued in a low voice, "They are Yin family virtuosos." The Yin family of the Punglai continent? The people surrounding were silently shocked. In the Punglai continent, the Yin clan and the Jun family were factions of the same level. What were they going to do, bringing in such a large army? Before everyone recovered from their shock, another strong aura descended upon them. Raising their heads, they saw, once again, a large army rush past them. This caused many people to be stunned. What was going on? Are they also Yin clan virtuosos? I've seen one of them in the Eastern Deity Island. At that time, that person was with Shangguan clan Shangguan Qiuya, guarding her, someone said. This caused another shock among the crowd. The virtuosos of the Shangguan clan had also arrived. In the Eastern Deity Island, even though the Jun family and the Shangguan clan did not clash face to face, there were certainly conflicts between them. And in particular, that happened when Jun Qiuyan's cultivation was crippled. Everyone could vaguely feel that a huge storm was brewing. It seemed that 3 of the top-tier factions in the Prunglai continent had already gathered in the Prunglai deity region. At the entrance to the Eastern Deity Island, a column of silhouettes walked out. The person taking the lead was a lady who had an extraordinary air about her and stunning features. When she stepped out, she looked at the crowd surrounding her and sent out her divine consciousness. Right after that, a row of virtuosos appeared and flashed toward her. Very quickly, they stopped next to Shangguan Qiuya. One of them said, "My lady." Shangguan Qiuya nodded her head slightly and said, "Have you all arrived?" "Yes, all of us have arrived," the other person replied. Shangguan Qiuya took a step out and said, "Let's go." As she finished, the row of people strode away from where they were. Before she came out of the island, she had already notified her clan and had her clan's virtuosos come over as reinforcements. Due to what happened on the Eastern Deity Island, she was worried that something might happen, so she had already started making arrangements some time ago. A short while later, they arrived at a tavern in the Prunglai deity region. It was rather quiet around here, and the atmosphere had a refined feel to it. There were no unwanted noises around. The entire tavern had been rented by someone. A middle-aged man sat there quietly, drinking alcohol. It was when Shangguan Qiuya arrived that he put down his cup of wine and shouted, "Qiuya." "Father," Shangguan Qiuya replied. The middle-aged man turned out to be Shangguan Qiuya's father. This meant that he was the Shangguan clan's current leader, Shangguan Hong. "How did your cultivation at the Eastern Deity Island go?" Shangguan Hong asked Shangguan Qiuya as he looked at her. He felt that his daughter's aura had a slight change, and thought she probably achieved significant progress. I obtained quite several opportunities." Shangguan Qiuya nodded. "Of course, in this journey, the most important thing was that I made an acquaintance with someone." "The Dongyuan Pavilion Master?" Shangguan Hong asked. "Yes, the Dongyuan Pavilion Master Yi Liunian." Shangguan Qiuya nodded. "Previously, I've sent father some news. This Yi Liunian has astounding potential. We might even not be able to find someone who can rival him in the entire Prunglai continent." Shangguan Hong nodded his head slightly. "I have also heard quite a few rumors about him. On the Eastern Deity Island, did you observe their attitude?" Shangguan Qiuya replied. "The Eastern Deity Island will definitely support him." "Are you certain?" Shangguan Hong asked. "To what extent are they willing to do it?" "I'm certain," Shangguan Qiuya replied very seriously. "If I guess correctly, the Eastern Deity Island will definitely guarantee his safety, even at the cost of declaring war." Before she exited the island, Yi Futian had spoken a little to her. Even if they didn't talk in the Eastern Deity Island, she could observe the situation and clearly tell how the people of the Eastern Deity Island treated Yi Futian. This Yi Futian was enjoying an emperor's treatment on the Eastern Deity Island. The feeling that it gave people was that Yi Futian was the Eastern Deity Island's young lord. "I understand now." Shangguan Hong nodded his head, his eyes glinting sharply. He had already more or less decided in his heart. This was a huge opportunity for him. At that moment, an overpowering aura washed over the tavern from the outside. The Shangguan clan virtuosos immediately went out to stop the hostile guests. From afar, a row of silhouettes descended majestically. They levitated in midair, staring at the tavern. "Shangguan Hong," a cold voice sounded. Shangguan Hong stood up and took a few steps forward. He looked up at the silhouette in the sky. "Jun Xiaorao." Shangguan Hong looked toward the person who arrived. The leader of the Jun family had also arrived. Jun Qiuyan was this Jun Xiaoyao's son. Behind him, the Renhuangs were exuding a terrifying aura. Jun Xiaoyao's sights settled on Shengguan Xiuya. His eyes carried a murderous intent. He said, I heard that on the eastern deity island, Shengguan Xiuya was going to lead the people of the Shengguan clan to deal with my Jun family, causing the countless deaths and severe injuries suffered by Jun family's virtuosos. Shengguan Hong, is the Shengguan clan going to give me an explanation? Brother Xiaoyao, I'm afraid you are mistaken, Shengguan Hong calmly replied. I've just asked my last Xiuya just now. She said that she had not even acted once since the beginning, and the people of my Shengguan clan also did not partake in it. I believe they would not lie to me. Shengguan Hong, I do not wish to debate with you over this matter any longer, Jun Xiaoyao coldly replied. Answer my question directly. How are you going to settle this? I don't understand what you mean, Shengguan Hong replied blandly, as though he was completely indifferent to Jun Xiaoyao. Just as he finished speaking, Jun Xiaoyao's body exuded an incomparably intimidating might of the Great Path. In their surroundings, it seemed like storms of the Great Path were brewing. Many people felt it pierce into their bones, and in the distance, many felt waves of coldness wash over them. As they were speaking, practitioners were continuously walking out of Eastern Deity Island. Finally, at the entrance to the Eastern Deity Island, a white-haired silhouette walked out. The moment he appeared, countless people set their sights on him, as though everyone was staring at him. The silhouette that walked out of the Eastern Deity Island was Futian. He stood there quietly and felt countless gazes. He was a little surprised. He did not expect himself to be this popular. There were also many divine consciousnesses sweeping toward him from afar. Futian turned his head behind and looked at the crippled Jun Xiuyan and said, Your family has come to welcome you back. Jun Xiuyan's aura had already deteriorated to an extremely weak state. He was almost half dead. His eyes carried a poisonous hatred, but there was also a glint of hope in them. Now that Futian had finally left the Eastern Deity Island, he was going to witness, for himself, how Futian died. From a great distance away came strong auras. Futian looked in that direction, and in a moment, he saw that renhuangs appeared everywhere. They were standing in different places. The area had already completely been sealed by them. It was obvious that they had waited for a long time. Futian naturally knew who they were. He could sense the level of cultivation from the divine consciousness that swept over him. Among them were several high-level renhuang virtuosos. Furthermore, there were still virtuosos coming over swiftly from a great distance away. While they were physically still a long way from here, their divine consciousness had already descended. Their strong auras of the Great Path shrouded the entire sky, pressurizing the area around the Eastern Deity Island entrance to the maximum. Futian looked into a great distance into the skies and saw silhouettes walking over. Only he was standing there alone. He too felt a faint pressure, but he was not bothered by it. He still stood there quietly, his white robes fluttering in the air. If the top-tier faction of the Penglai continent, the Jun family, was willing to let it go, he too could let things be. After all, it was only Jun Xiuyan who enraged him. However, this was not likely to happen. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1941, Surrounded. Chapter 1941, Surrounded. Save me! Jun Xiuyan screamed as he saw the silhouettes who arrived. However, his voice was rather hoarse, so there was no way his plea for help could have traveled such a great distance. However, they certainly heard him. Their divine consciousness shrouded the entire area, so of course, they would be able to hear his voice. The silhouettes emitted a fearsome aura of the Great Path. Many among them had a murderous intent in their eyes. The Jun family members were outraged when they heard the news of Jun Xiuyan being crippled. Furthermore, the practitioners from the Jun family, who entered the Eastern Deity Island, were nearly annihilated. Now, the very fact that Futian was walking out of the Eastern Deity Island with the crippled Jun Xiuyan in tow was a form of humiliation to the Jun family. However, Futian turned his gaze towards the majestic army of silhouettes and said, While I was in the Eastern Deity Island, Jun Xiuyan led many virtuosos in an attempt to kill me. I have thus crippled his cultivation as punishment. I am willing to spare his life if you all are willing to let this matter end right here. As he finished speaking, he pushed Jun Qiuyan's body away from him. A Renhuang stepped out and caught Jun Qiuyan, who was being pushed outwards by an invisible force. Then, with the Renhuang supporting him, they returned to the crowd of Jun family virtuosos. The people from a distance who were onlooking had some thoughts in their minds. It seemed like the Dongyuan pavilion master wanted to make peace, but how could the other party agree? Since he had released Jun Qiuyan, the Jun family no longer had anything to be worried about and could deal with him straight on. However, he probably did not have any other choice but to do what he did. A top-tier faction of the Prenglai continent had led an army over here, ready to fight him. There were thus countless virtuosos in the Prenglai deity region. Apart from the raw strength of the family, they were also greatly influential. They had influence and power, even in the Prenglai deity region. Destroy his cultivation, but don't let him die yet. When Jun Qiuyan returned to his family, his eyes suddenly had a terrifying look, and they carried an incomparably strong hatred. Yi Futian had utterly ruined his life. To have one's cultivation stripped was worse than death. He also wanted Yi Futian to experience this personally. Thus, he wanted Yi Futian to live while being crippled, and take his time to torture him. Yi Futian glanced at Jun Qiuyan with a bland expression. It seemed that Jun Qiuyan did not even have a tinge of gratitude in him. Are you going to follow us? Do you want us to force you? An elderly man asked aloud as he walked out from the crowd. He was an elder of the Jun family, and was at the pinnacle of the 8th level of cultivation. The level 8 virtuoso, who abandoned Jun Qiuyan behind on the eastern deity island, and fled alone stood beside him. Hearing the other party speak, Yi Futian smiled a little. It was exactly like how he predicted. This matter could not be resolved peacefully. The Jun family would not give up, and would deal with him at all costs. Since that's the case, do what you want then, Yi Futian said aloud. He was willing to let it go, not because he was afraid of the Jun family virtuosos, but because he did not want to waste time on this matter. However, since they weren't willing to let it go, then he could only fight. Renhuangs stepped out one after another, their bodies emitting fearsome auras of the Great Path. The level 8 virtuoso, who was on the eastern deity island, cautioned them. Be careful. This person is powerful. He has the combat power of a high-level Renhuang. The Jun family virtuosos had heard of this before. This ridiculously powerful low-level Renhuang, in fact, had the combat power of a high-level Renhuang. He single-handedly dove straight into an enemy of over 100 Jun family Renhuangs. He nearly annihilated the Jun family virtuosos who had entered the eastern deity island. Only a few remained alive. With a battle record like that, of course, no one would dare be careless. They were rather wary, and did not get too close to Yi Futian. A storm of the Great Path gathered, and then from afar, they unleashed it toward Yi Futian. The terrifying attack spell descended from the heavens. Wisps of will of the sword appeared around Yi Futian's body, and they morphed into a sword screen, sealing the entire area. The attacks that descended on him were shattered directly. Once they even got close to this sword realm, they were instantly pulverized. His eyes were as sharp as swords, and sweeping his glance across the majestic-looking group of virtuosos, he spoke aloud. So the Jun family is set on going up against me? Yes. From a distance away, a strong and sure voice echoed out. In the skies above, a silhouette traveled over. He emitted a powerful aura brimming with power that exerted immense pressure on the Great Path space that Yi Futian was in. That was Jun Qiuyan's father, Jun Xiaoyao. He came from where Shangguan Qiuya and the rest were at. The virtuosos of the Shangguan family followed closely behind. Shangguan Hong and Shangguan Qiuya were both there. They stood at another place and said, according to what I know, the dispute between both parties had always been started by Jun Qiuyan, beginning from the Prenglai deity lake in the Prenglai deity region. Many people could bear witness to it. Now he is only getting his just desserts. Brother Xiaoyao need not pursue this matter anymore. Many people let out a shocked expression. That was the leader of the Shangguan clan, Shangguan Hong. His words directly represented the will of the Shangguan clan. Did this mean that they wanted to participate in this too? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were as cold as ice. and he turned them to look at Shangguan Hong. Last time he had not even sought revenge on the Shangguan family. How dare they interfere with this too? Brother Shangguan, you really want chaos to descend on this world, eh? Another voice echoed out. From another direction came another grand army of virtuosos. This time, they were virtuosos from the Yun clan. Many people felt a tremor in their hearts. Before this, many people had noticed that armies from the 3 top-tier factions of the Penglai continent had arrived at the Penglai deity region. Now that Yi Futian had walked out of the eastern deity island, as expected, the virtuosos from each faction appeared simultaneously. The Shangguan clan had always been subtly at odds with the Jun family. On the other hand, the Yun clan seemed to have allied with the Jun family. Looking at the vast number of people that each faction had brought along, each of them must have considered things very carefully beforehand. Then does this matter also involve the Yun clan? Shangguan Hong asked. If he guessed correctly, everyone wanted to make use of the opportunity of this dispute to further their own agenda. Apart from slaying Yi Futian, it seemed that the Jun family also wanted to join hands with the Yun clan to deal with the Shangguan clan. Then again, he also had a very similar plan. He wanted to make use of the possibility that the eastern deity island would be involved and deal with the Jun family. The situation at that moment was like an arrow that had already been strung. There was no going back. All that was left unknown was whether Shangguan Chuya's information was accurate, and how much Yi Futian was worth to the eastern deity island. Yi Lionian was extremely wanton in the eastern deity island. He massacred without a second thought. He has the blood of countless practitioners on his hands. As a faction of the Penglai continent, the Jun family also suffered the loss of many renhuangs, and even our nephew Jun Shuyan had his cultivation crippled. Given this circumstance, you dare say this matter has nothing to do with the Yun clan? Said Yun Mu, the leader of the Yun clan. Beside him, Yunja glanced at Yi Futian. He did not dare to provoke him on the eastern deity island. However, now that he had exited the eastern deity island, no matter how talented he was bound to die this time. There were rumors about how Yi Futian had joined the eastern deity island and was in their favor. However, it was just that. The 2 top-tier factions had dispatched large armies to slay Yi Futian. Even if Yi Futian is in the eastern deity island's favor, how much were they willing to give up for him? The eastern deity island had hidden for countless years. It was not possible that they would declare war on the 2 top-tier factions of the Penglai continent for the sake of one Yi Futian. Using this opportunity, the Jun family and Yun clan would kill Yi Futian first, and then annihilate the Shangguan clan. On the eastern deity island, Shangguan Chuya was very brazen. Do you mean that the Yun clan also wants to kill me? Yi Futian asked Yun Mu after hearing what he had said. Yun Mu glanced at Yi Futian and replied, that will depend on Brother Xiaoyao's decision. I understand now. Yi Futian nodded. No matter if I was at the Penglai deity region or on the eastern deity island, I never once provoked anyone. Jun Shuyan thought too highly of himself and wanted me to follow him. When I rejected his offer, he was displeased with me, being the arrogant man that he is. On the eastern deity island, I had also encountered a few people who provoked me, for example the Jun family virtuosos. After that they all died. Yi Futian's words made all the virtuosos hesitate a moment. After that they all died? What did that mean? With the Jun family and Yin clan instigating this conflict, Yi Futian was hinting. Hearing Yi Futian's words, Shangguan Hong could not help but let out a short laugh. This man was interesting, and it sounded like he was very serious. Jun Xiaoyao still stared at Yi Futian's side, without ordering anyone to take action. It seemed like he was waiting to see the Eastern Deity Island's attitude on this matter. The Eastern Deity Island was located on the Penglai continent. While they had been isolated from the rest of the world for countless years, but they had never completely severed their connection. Every 10 years, they would open themselves up, and from within, he could sense an extreme power emanating from the Eastern Deity Island. It was just that he was unsure if they would stand up against the top-tier factions of the Penglai continent for the sake of just one man, albeit a prodigy. Jun Xiaoyao stepped forward and announced, "Today, whoever tries to stop the Jun family from killing Yi Lionian would be declaring war on us. Kill him. As he ordered, an incomparably dominating might of the Great Path exploded out from the Renhuangs. An elderly man stepped forward in midair and stopped above Yi Futian. He raised his palm and pressed it down. Instantly, the glow of a divine blade pierced through the heaven and earth. From the skies above, it shot down straight towards Yi Futian. Another divine sword appeared in the air. A fearsome will of the sword was infused into the divine sword. Countless wisps of will of the sword swirled around the divine sword, and it shot towards the air. The two blades of light collided together, causing a destructive sword glow to explode out into the horizon from the heavens above. When the battle broke out, silhouettes shot out from the entrance to the eastern deity island. The goddesses had an ethereal air about them, and the aura of the Great Path from them permeated the entire space. A part of majestic Renhuangs appeared simultaneously, causing the surrounding virtuosos to hesitate a moment in a short while. At this moment, Bai Mu walked out of the group. She looked at the Jun family and Yun clan. Beside her, there were a few people who were exuding an extremely fearsome aura, but she was nonetheless the leader. After all, Bai Mu already had the status of a goddess, and could thus represent the will of the Eastern Deity Island. Does the Eastern Deity Island wish to interfere with the matters of the Penglai continent? Jun Xiaoyao looked in Bai Mu's direction and said coldly. Standing high in the skies, his divine halo permeated the space. The might of a level 9 Renhuang exploded outwards, and the heavens and earth appeared to tremble in fear. Under this immense pressure, everyone felt Jun Xiaoyao's strength and determination. Even if the virtuosos of the Eastern Deity Island appeared, he still emitted his might of the Great Path. His adamant attitude was obvious. This time, it was not just about the grudge between Yi Futian and Jun Xiuyan. It also determined if the Jun family would become prosper or wither. It was a battle for the future of his clan, and it was the same for the Shangguan clan. Pavilion Master Yi is a valuable guest of the Eastern Deity Island. Anyone who dares to touch him dies, Bai Mu coldly said. The virtuosos behind her spread out. At the same time, from a distance away in the surrounding regions, came virtuosos from all directions one after another. Stepping through the air, they descended in this area. They emanated a terrifying aura and surrounded everyone. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1942. The Beginning of War. Chapter 1942. The beginning of war. Seeing the scene unfold before him, Shangguan Hong was more certain. It seemed like Qiuya did not read the situation wrongly. The Eastern Deity Island was willing to declare war for Yi Futian, Flame Emperor. Some people turned to look at an elderly man who was wearing robes with flame motifs. He had long hair and beard, an extraordinary aura, and an ethereal air about him. Around him a terrifyingly hot air flowed. He was one of the very powerful level 8 figures in the Penglai continent, and was well versed in the path of the flame. And so his flame of the path was extremely fearsome. He had come from a great distance away, and appeared in the group high in the skies surrounding everyone else. He had come to aid the Eastern Deity Island. Again, a couple of people looked towards another direction. Among the Renhuangs who came to render aid, a number were renowned figures in the Penglai continent, and some were even familiar with the various factions. They all actually had ties with the Eastern Deity Island. For so many years the Eastern Island had never been concerned about what was happening in the outside world, and neither had it participated in any conflict in the Penglai continent. With so many years that have passed by, the Penglai continent had already forgotten about the existence of the Eastern Deity Island. At this moment, behind Bai Mu, an elderly man with a high level of cultivation spoke aloud. He was an alchemy master in the Eastern Deity Island. Beside him were several practitioners. For so many years, while they had not concerned themselves with the events of the outer world, it did not mean that they had completely isolated themselves. Many people from the Penglai continent had come to the Eastern Deity Island to seek elixirs. Having received favors from the Eastern Deity Island, with a single call for aid, these people would naturally come over to help. The Eastern Deity Island of the past were the absolute rulers of the Penglai continent, and its influence even extended far beyond the Penglai continent. However, even though the various factions of the Penglai continent knew that Yi Futian had already joined the Eastern Deity Island, they still dared to try to capture him, and even requested that the Eastern Deity Island stay out of this matter. Obviously, they had almost forgotten just how high the status of the Eastern Deity Island was on the Penglai continent in the past. Hearing his words, Jun Xiaoyao's and Yun Mu's expressions changed slightly. Of course they knew just how powerful the Eastern Deity Island was in the past. However, humans had the tendency to forget, and with the passage of countless years, the fact that the Eastern Deity Island was still the ultimate ruler of the Penglai continent was gradually being forgotten. They did understand that the Eastern Deity Island was certainly not weak, and could even likely be stronger than any of them. However, the two powerful factions were joining hands to capture only one person, so the Eastern Deity Island should not even have bothered to interfere to such an extent. Perhaps in the past they might not have. This time, however, they had obviously guessed wrongly. The entire strength of the Eastern Deity Island had emerged, and not only that, they had already gathered virtuosos from all places beforehand. Now in this vast region, the pressure that they exuded was so terrifying that practitioners, who had a low level of cultivation, did not even dare get close to them, and retreated quickly to a safe distance from this battlefield. This time, the Eastern Deity Island had re-emerged in the Penglai continent. Every 10 years the Eastern Deity Island will gift opportunities of the Great Path, and naturally every practitioner on the Penglai continent is respectable. We do not mean to provoke anyone, but this person has slayed many Renhuangs from my Jun family, and there are quite a few people who were invited, and the Jun family must give them a satisfactory explanation and conclusion. We do not have any intention of targeting the Eastern Deity Island. This time our only target is him. There is no reason for you to involve the Eastern Deity Island. Jun Xiaoyao's tone seemed to be less overbearing than before. It was obvious that he did not want to clash with the Eastern Deity Island head-on. Furthermore, there was still the Shengguan clan at the side looking out for chances to strike. If things really progressed to an all-out war, even if they could emerge victorious, it would only be a Pyrrhic victory. There would be no winners. Just now the goddess had already explained very clearly that the Eastern Deity Island has its own rules. They entered the Eastern Deity Island to kill Pavilion Master Yi. Do you expect him to let himself be killed without retaliating at all? The elderly man said coldly. If the Eastern Deity Island were the Eastern Deity Island of the past, would you have the guts to come and ask for Yi Futian's life? In other words, they did not treat the current Eastern Deity Island seriously. They thought that no matter what, the Eastern Deity Island would not dare to declare war. Of course, anyone should follow the Eastern Deity Island's rules on the island. However, we have waited till he has left the Eastern Deity Island before acting. I'm sure we did not affect the Eastern Deity Island, right? Jun Xiaoyao replied. Why would the Eastern Deity Island interfere with the grudge between the Jun family and Yi Futian? Let's not waste more time talking uselessly. Act now, the elderly man said. As he finished speaking, a breath-stopping pressure permeated the vast space. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes turned cold as he looked at the practitioners of the Eastern Deity Island. He did not expect the Eastern Deity Island to act without hesitation at all. In fact, the scene before his eyes suggested that they had been preparing for this battle for quite some time already, all for the sake of Yi Futian. However, the situation now was irreversible. Even if they were willing to let it go now, the other party might not be willing anymore. Outside this region remained the virtuosos from the various continents. They all wanted to witness the battle before them. They did not expect that they could spectate such a massive battle even after leaving the Eastern Deity Island. This battle would completely determine the future hierarchy of the Penglai continent. No one would have initially thought that because of one Yi Futian, or rather the one small incident of conflict that occurred in the Penglai Deity Lake caused by Jun Chuyan's provocation of Yi Futian, could eventually lead to the change in the social structure of the Penglai continent. Even Jun Chuyan himself did not foresee this day. Even though his cultivation had been crippled, he could still sense the terrifying might of the great path circulating heaven and earth. He felt a tremble in his heart on sight of the majestic Renhuang armies. This time, the Jun family were not the only ones with the Renhuang army. Their opponent also had a huge army of Renhuangs. Due to his personal matters, not only was his cultivation crippled, but he was also forced to wage war with the Eastern Deity Island. Jun Xiaoyao stepped out in midair, and an incomparably strong might of the great path descended upon the space. In the heavens above, a golden divine light radiated out into the vast space. A humongous, magnificent ancient palace formed from the divine light. The ancient palace had 9 floors, and it seemed to be built from pure gold. Its sheer might pressurized heaven and earth. It was his divine wheel of the great path. Jun Xiaoyao waved his palm, and an aurora appeared through the vast heavens. The 9-floored ancient palace pressed down menacingly, and a terrifying rumble resounded throughout. Many great paths were shattered straight away. Several halos of the ancient palace also formed from the divine light, and hammered straight down, attacking in the direction of Futian. Wherever it passed, destruction followed. From the Eastern Deity Island's side, an elderly man stepped out, and with one step he crossed the vast empty space, coming to a stop below the ancient palace. He faced Jun Xiaoyao, and between heaven and earth a divine matrix appeared, radiating outwards into the boundless space, and creating a barrier. The ancient palace plummeted downwards with a thunderous rumble, and collided onto the matrix, but it was unable to destroy the barrier. In another direction, Yun Mu of the Yin clan also stepped out. He emanated the overpowering aura of a level 9 practitioner, pressurizing the entire area. Seeing him act, Sheng Guanhong crossed the distance with a step and faced Yun Mu straight on. The two of them each controlled a top-tier faction, and disputes had existed between them since a long time ago. Now that things had progressed to this stage, they both had no choice but to wage war. It was a fight for their fates. The one who lost would be fated to stay defeated forever. The other virtuosos also started unleashing their attacks. Looking towards the battlefield, Futian also walked into it. Since the war had already begun, then he could only annihilate the Jun family and the Yun clan. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1943. The Divine Tree Appears. Chapter 1943. The Divine Tree appears. Futian's body levitated midair. With his white hair and dressed in white, his eyes were as bright as stars as they swept through the battlefield. Boom! A loud sound resounded, and Futian saw an implement shooting towards him in an attack. It was a golden wheel that cut straight through the space. It emitted a sharp, piercing sound, and even the fabric of space itself seemed to be torn apart under its immense speed. However, Futian's silhouette was like a beam of light, and from where he stood he vanished. The implement cut straight through his afterimage, and tore the mirage into pieces. In the skies above, Futian looked at the person who attacked him. His opponent was a high-level Renhuang virtuoso. The Jun family knew that his combat abilities were extremely high. Unless they were high-level Renhuangs, they dare not fight him face to face. The person who attacked was at the pinnacle of the 7th level of cultivation. It was only because of his cultivation level, and the fact that he also had the support of an implement, that he dared to attack Futian. He wanted to see for himself just how strong Futian was. He heard that Futian killed many Renhuangs from his Jun family. He was very curious to find out how true the rumors were. That Futian was so powerful that a level 7 virtuoso could not even retaliate. Raising his head, he saw Futian floating in the skies above. In front of him, a sacred divine sword glowed brightly, and whistled while it floated in the air. Above him, there was vaguely an ethereal form of a Buddha. This Buddha halo emanated an endless glow of the great path of the Buddha. The voice of the Buddha permeated the space, and morphed into endless ancient scripts, radiating out in an instant. The voice of the great path resounded throughout the heavens, and echoed in the eardrums of many people, who then suffered attacks on their spiritual soul. The level 7 Renhuang, who tried to attack Futian, felt a Buddha enter his mind. The Vajra demon-slaying rhythm sounded out through his mind, overwhelming him. His spiritual soul trembled violently, as though it was about to leave his body. Even his vision became a little blurry. At that moment, he felt an extremely fearsome and murderous sword will. His heart could not help but beat violently. With a roar, his implement flew back to his body and revolved around him, guarding him by tearing apart the space in front of him. When the divine sword descended in its attack, it was like a stream of swords descending from the 9 heavens. Destruction followed wherever it passed. With a thunderous sound, Yi Futian's opponent's implement cracked, and the power of the great path was split in half. The level 7 virtuoso retreated hastily, but the divine sword was faster. With a flash of the sword glow like lightning, the person was pierced straight down from his head. In his eyes was an intense fear. He wanted to experience Yi Futian's strength, and he had. In an instant he was killed. Several people were paying attention to the battle over here. Even the practitioners from various continents watching from afar were focused on this duel. Apart from the fights between the most powerful figures, everyone was most interested in Yi Futian's strength. After all the conflicts leading to this battle stemmed from him. So naturally they were curious to find out just how strong this person in the rumors was. They had witnessed his strength. A level 7 virtuoso was killed by him with just a thought. He did not even have a chance to retaliate. Vajra demon-slaying rhythm. Many older practitioners of the Punglai continent whispered under their breaths when they saw the power of the Buddha that Yi Futian used. Among them, some had heard about the powers of the Buddha, and had also previously entered the Eastern Deity Island to cultivate in front of the Buddha cliff face. However, no one had truly managed to fully learn the techniques. They had all only managed to comprehend snippets of the technique. Even then, it was enough to strengthen their way of sonic wave. No one expected that one day a low-level Runhuang practitioner would inherit and fully comprehend this particular technique. Even more surprisingly, he had managed to incorporate it into his combat techniques in such a short time. Its power was extremely strong. The rhythm of the Buddha caused his opponent to lose focus for a moment, and that resulted in him being slayed in one strike. However, at that moment, an even more terrifying pressure shrouded Yi Futian. In the air above him, several high-level Renhuangs appeared in different locations. They were all level 7 high-level Renhuangs. They seemed to have discussed this strategy before the battle even started. The moment the battle started, they headed straight for Yi Futian with other virtuosos clearing the way for them. Behind Yi Futian, Beigong Ao, and the virtuosos from the Eastern Deity Island swiftly flew over. But the huge Renhuang army appeared before them, preventing from going to Yi Futian's aid. Although just from the size of their armies, the Jun family was not as strong as the Eastern Deity Island, but their armies were far more concentrated. Their strength was focused around Yi Futian. Killing Yi Futian was their goal, but waging war against the Eastern Deity Island was not their intention. However, given the current circumstance, they could only get rid of Yi Futian first. Perhaps once Yi Futian died, the Eastern Deity Island would give up and no longer be stubborn about waging war against them. Terrifying palaces of the Great Path floated above Yi Futian's head. They were similar to the divine wheel of Jun Xiaoyao, leader of the Jun family. It was obvious that they were all members of the Jun family. Since they had the same spirit, the divine wheel that they forged would also be very alike. A breath-stopping pressure pressed down from the heavens, causing the air in the entire area to become impossibly heavy. It was as though one could not even stand steadily. Yi Futian felt a limitless power pressing against him. The divine palaces hammered down. Aurorae of the Great Path stretched across the skies. These aurorae contained enough power to dominate and shatter any great path, and it was like they could flatten any and everything. Yi Futian's divine sword swept across the air. His will of the sword raged, whipping up a violent storm around him. However, the terrifying blades of light were continuously pulverized. A fearsome rumble reverberated throughout the skies, and the divine palaces descended, as though they were going to seal the heavens. In the face of this power, the Yi Futian below seemed to be especially minuscule and powerless. Is the Eastern Deity Island actually not going to help him? The virtuosos onlooking from afar spoke aloud. Even though the Jun family had a lot of virtuosos blocking the people from the Eastern Deity Island in their attempt to hunt Yi Futian down, the Eastern Deity Island certainly had the ability to render aid. However, they did not do this. Rather, they stayed outside the encirclement, holding their opponents back. Was this because they had confidence in Yi Futian? The people attacking Yi Futian were all core members of the Jun family, and were all level 7 high-level Renhuangs. When they unleashed their well-honed skills simultaneously, their powers resonated with each other, and the entire space would completely fall under their control. The region would morph into a great path domain, and everything within it would be utterly dominated and shattered. The endless divine palaces were about to hammer down on Yi Futian and smash him into smithereens, when all of a sudden Yi Futian's body radiated an incomparably glorious green divine glow. In that instant, a divine tree appeared with his body at its center. Countless trees and branches sprouted and spread outwards, continuously winding towards the divine palaces that were closing in on him. Many people let out a strange expression. Was this also his spirit? The ancient tree was growing at a rate that was too terrifying, and it expanded out at a fearsome speed, eventually morphing into a divine tree that was tens of thousands of feet tall. Its incomparably thick trunk was even larger than a divine palace. The vines and branches that twirled towards the divine palaces were similarly extremely sturdy, emanating an unrivaled green divine glow. However, this was not what made the divine tree amazing. Normally, ancient trees were very weak and could be easily destroyed. This divine tree, however, seemed to have an unrivaled life force. The divine attacks of the great path that rained down on the divine tree actually failed to destroy it. Even if some of the branches were damaged, they grew out again in an instant. Thus, a majestic view was formed in the region, a heaven-reaching ancient tree that was continuously growing, and its vines, branches and leaves that tangled around the divine palaces. It seemed like that divine tree had carved out a space for itself. The powers of the divine palaces were subtly being weakened. The destructive powers of the great path seemed to have been completely restrained in that moment. The virtuosos who were observing the battle were all shocked. Was this Yi Futian's divine wheel of the great path? Was the sword not what he was well versed in? Many people know him as the white-haired sword emperor, since he had a sword-type divine wheel of the great path. The practitioners who had been to the core island of the Eastern Deity Island let out a strange expression. That feeling that they had was very familiar. It was like they had experienced it before. In the forbidden grounds of the core island of the Eastern Deity Island, they had also seen a divine tree. That tree had tortured them very horribly. Now then, what did this divine tree mean? They did not know that Yi Futian intentionally let them see this divine tree. His natal spirit was the world tree, which was also an ancient tree. Moreover, the world tree very likely was closely related to very huge secrets. Previously, his foster father did not allow him to reveal it in front of others. Now that he was in the divine prefectures, he had to be even more careful about it. Fortunately, he had gained a relic of the great path on the Eastern Deity Island that could work as his cover very nicely. He obtained the divine tree from the forbidden grounds. Could it be that the people who had entered the forbidden grounds had a sudden epiphany? They recalled that there was a divine elixir. Did Yi Futian manage to obtain the elixir? After coming out that day, Yi Futian was also similarly quite beaten. However, upon more careful recall, he seemed to be a little different from the rest at that time. His aura had changed a little. However, they all did not put it to heart. After all, they had all been quite unsuccessful, and was utterly beaten up. So of course they believed that there was no way Yi Futian succeeded. However, seeing the scene unfold before their eyes, as well as the Eastern Deity Island's persistence in protecting Yi Futian, they vaguely started to feel that they might have been mistaken after all. Yi Futian might have already obtained the divine elixir, so his value to the Eastern Deity Island would be extraordinary. The leaves and branches of the ancient tree wrapped around the divine palaces of the great path, and even reached up into the heavens. The Renhuangs wanted to flee, but felt a chilly intent wash over them from the divine tree. The entire space of the great path seemed to be frozen. Many people subtly felt that their blood circulations had become a lot slower, and they could not emanate their powers of the great path as smoothly. More terrifyingly, at that moment, the voice of the Buddha resounded straight into their minds, violently shaking their spiritual souls. Layer upon layer of attacks of the great path hammered on them, leaving the high-level Runhuang virtuosos no chance to fend for themselves. Oin! The vines of the divine tree wrapped around their body, and channeled powers of Yin that infiltrated their bodies. They felt their strength leaving them drastically. Their aura of the great path exploded to its maximum in their attempt to escape. However, at that moment, divine fire of the great path suddenly came alive. The interplay of yin and yang between the extremely cold will and horrifyingly burning hot air that flowed into their bodies simultaneously caused some groan. In an instant, the level 7 renhuangs in the air let out blood-curdling screams of pain. Their bodies were infiltrated by the flames of the great path, and they gradually faded away. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1944. Killing with Abandon. Chapter 1944. Killing with Abandon. In the distance, many strong practitioners looked at the scene in front of them with shock. Although the cultivators of all continents had not come into contact with top figures, having reached the Runhuang cultivation realm, they had seen many geniuses before. However, they had never seen such a domineering lower Renhuang. The people who attacked him were all level 7 high-level Renhuangs, and they were also the core members of the Jun family, the top faction of the Penglai continent. Several strong people surrounded them, and they attacked at the same time with the resonance of their great ways, but they were directly countered and killed. None of them escaped. When was a lower Renhuang ever able to have such extraordinary combat strength? They only felt that they had not seen enough of the world. What is that ability of his? There were cultivators from all continents discussing, shocked by the combat strength Yi Futian had displayed. In an instantaneous attack, he exhibited at least 3 Dao abilities. Some people were speechless. Moreover, each of the Dao's abilities was terrifying. There's more than, the person next to him whispered, and the people agreed. Swordsmanship, way of sonic wave, path of the flame, power of Yin, and that divine tree. Each ability was terrifying. Moreover, his divine wheel of the great path must have been perfect. No one doubted that. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have this kind of combat strength. Ignoring them for now, even those who had seen Yi Futian attack before on Eastern Deity Island were deeply awed as well. Although Yi Futian could already kill level 7 mighty figures when he was at Eastern Deity Island, he could do it much more easily now. Or rather, he could do it more directly and domineeringly, crushing and killing them with his most domineering stance. This gave people a feeling that level 7s were like ants and could be destroyed with the snap of the fingers. However, in reality, level 7s were already high-level Renhuangs and stood in the upper echelons of Renhuangs. If the whole divine prefecture is the base, they would definitely be considered to be at the upper echelons of the divine prefecture. But at this moment they were so fragile. But who was considered strong would also depend on who they were compared with. Seeing the fall of those strong people, the Renhuangs of the Jun family also had gloomy faces. Was he that strong? How great would the potential of this power, that made waves of chill run down their spines, be? No wonder the Eastern Deity Island would try to protect him, not hesitating to go to war. Jun Shuyan was brought to the farthest direction at the back. Those who were killed were his clan members, blood relatives. But because of this incident, they all died in Yi Futian's hands. He felt extremely complicated emotions. There was hate, endless hatred, and everything was because of Yi Futian. But also there was a sense of strong regret. If he was not so self-righteous at first in the Penglai deity lake, and did not provoke Yi Futian, or no longer pursued that matter afterward, then all this would not have happened. Seeing the situation in front of him, he was clear that he brought his whole family into a storm that could have destroyed his whole family. Moreover, they were already destined to be unable to escape from the situation. They could only continue moving forward. In the cultivation world, when one was vulnerable, no one will forgive them for their mistakes and show mercy. They would only cut the weeds and dig up the roots to eliminate future problems. Kill him. Jun Xiaoyao, who was in battle, roared. Although he was being held back, he could still see Yi Futian's side of the battle. It was enough to just split out on a wisp of consciousness. Seeing Yi Futian's strength, not only did he not want to retreat, he developed a greater determination. Yi Futian must be killed to allow the Eastern Deity Island to exit this battle. If not, the Eastern Deity Island would go to war at any cost for this genius. Even as a level 9, after witnessing Yi Futian's battle with his own eyes, Jun Xiaoyao had to admit that this was probably the most outstanding lower Renhuang he had ever seen, bar none. Must you block me? He looked at the old man in front of him. The matrix covered the sky and held him in this space. There was no way for him to kill Yi Futian, so he could only order other strong people to do so. Jun Xiaoyao, this time, you went the wrong way, the old man responded. It was true that the Jun family was the top faction of the Penglai continent, but they still should not choose to start a war outside the Eastern Deity Island. Although he could understand the attitude of the Jun family, after all, in the Eastern Deity Island, many strong cultivators of the Jun family were killed. Jun Xiuyan, the son of Jun Xiaoyao, was crippled, so the other side felt that it was imperative to kill Yi Futian. But the timing was not right. Jun Xiaoyao should not have come so directly. Unless he expected that the Eastern Deity Island would not fight, his presence would be forcing the Eastern Deity Island's hand. That way, he would make it so that they themselves had no path of retreat. Now the Eastern Deity Island had chosen to go to war. The Jun family could not retreat, even if they wanted to. What is right or wrong? Jun Xiaoyao said in a loud voice. His voice shook the void, and his power of the great path of attack descended. Countless sacred halls descended from the firmament, trying to suppress and shatter the space. Strong cultivators of the Jun family were killed in the Eastern Deity Island. Could the Jun family choose to avoid and not fight because of the Eastern Deity Island? Even if the two sides clashed, within the rules of the Eastern Deity Island, slaughter was slaughter. They naturally wanted revenge. The cultivation world was built like this. There was no right or wrong, only a difference in perspectives. Because of one's thought, the situation in the Penglai continent is going to change. Why suffer? The old man responded. The huge boundless spell matrix erupted with a beam of light that shot towards the heavens, colliding with the descending palace. On the other side, the battle between Shengguan Hong and Yin Mu was also extremely intense. Both of them were level 9s. The sky and the earth broke apart when they fought. Meanwhile, cultivators from the Shengguan clan and Yun clan clashed and fought violently. The boundless heaven and earth on the periphery of the Eastern Deity Island turned into a terrifying battlefield. After the order of Jun Xiaoyao, more strong cultivators went in the direction of Yi Futian, swarming to kill Yi Futian. Some of them attacked with their Dao abilities through the air, but there were many strong cultivators around to help Yi Futian intercept. There was no lack of mighty cultivators from the Eastern Deity Island. After all, this was their home turf. Bai Mu looked at the battlefield, thinking of her master's order. A cold light flashed in her eyes, and she opened her mouth. Today, the Jun family and the Yin clan want to kill the esteemed guest of our Eastern Deity Island, breaking the rules of the Eastern Deity Island. Now that the war has started, you all don't need to care about sentiment anymore. Kill all who resist. Out of all the invited Renhuangs, many were not putting in all their effort and hiding their strength. They all held back somewhat. After all, they did not know how this matter would end up, and without the protection of the Eastern Deity Island, if the Jun family wanted to deal with them in the future, it would be a huge hidden danger. However, Bai Mu's words seemed to have made it very clear. In the future, the Jun family would probably cease to exist. When they thought of this, they also made a decision, and the great will might on their bodies became even more terrifying. They no longer held back, and began to kill with abandon. In one direction, several Renhuangs were heading towards Yi Futian's direction to kill him, but they were blocked by a line of people who release flames of the way at the same time. In an instant, the void of heaven and earth turned into a field of flame, burning mountains and cooking the sea. The horrifying divine beams of flame shot towards the heavens, as their opponents, seemed to have been directly buried in the sea of flame. Those strong cultivators also released strong power of the Great Way, but different flames of the Way were distributed in different directions, turning into multiple flames of the Way. Those strong cultivators made their seals at the same time, and then a furnace tripod of the Great Way appeared in that space filled with flames of the Way, and the flames of the Way refined all existence. In another direction, the same group of strong people, who went towards Futian, was stopped. A group of goddesses of the Eastern Deity Island faced them. They released similar auras, and strong and extreme life force was released from their bodies. Several queens released ancient trees of the Great Way. Those were their divine wheels. They rolled towards the crowd, instantly flooding the space. I'm afraid the June family won't be able to kill him. The bystanders would always be the most clear-minded. The strong cultivators of various continents were all watching the battle in the distance, and could see the entire battle situation clearly. The Eastern Deity Island's side was at ease as this was their home turf after all. From an onlooker's point of view, the Eastern Deity Island had the absolute initiative. They could almost be considered to have been firmly in control of the battle. If they did not allow a group of people to go towards Futian previously, those strong cultivators might not have been able to reach him anyway. From the current situation, one could see that after Futian killed that group of strong cultivators, he stood alone in the center of the battlefield. Except for some ripples of wind from Dao abilities that rolled towards him, no renhuangs or attack could come to his side. They were all cut off. This created a rather strange situation. Futian stood there, and no one could fight. Standing in the center of the battlefield, he seemed to have nothing to do. Futian himself was also depressed. The Eastern Deity Island arranged properly and defended his side, so well it was impenetrable. But this made him idle in the middle of the storm. He had nothing to do as he watched the battle play out around him. Behind him, Beigong Ao and Emperor Helion were here as well. They were protecting him to his left and right. But in reality, they knew that with Futian's abilities, he no longer needed their protection. Beigong Ao could possibly still be stronger than him, but Emperor Helion was definitely no match for Futian. The previous battle could already show this clearly. Futian's gaze swept to one of the battlefields, then his body moved. Although the Eastern Deity Island was protecting him, he could not stand here to watch the battle. With his strength today, not many people from the opposing side could directly threaten his life. As long as the strongest people were held back, there was no threat to him. His body turned into a ray of light. In one direction, the mighty cultivators of both sides were clashing when they suddenly felt a powerful sword will descend. The expressions of the strong fighters of the June family all changed. When they turned their heads, they saw a blade of light flash past. After that, blood spurted out as multiple people were killed consecutively. However, Futian's body did not stop. That gorgeous blade of light shot through the void. It appeared on another battlefield in an instant. Another splendid divine blade of light descended. Sounds of slashing could be heard continuously as blood splattered in the void. Several more renhuangs were directly killed, as the blade of light was too fast. In the distance, those who watched the battle only saw a divine blade of light weaving through the battlefield, and wherever that light passed, blood would appear, accompanied by the fall of Renhuang realm powerhouses. This made their hearts quite unsettled. The renhuangs were like ants, and were being slaughtered with impunity. In just a few moments, they did not know how many were killed by Futian. If this continued, the renhuangs of the June family would be decimated. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1945. Doomsday for June Clan. Chapter 1945. Doomsday for June Clan. It was similarly difficult for the cultivators of the Yun clan. They were already facing the Shangguan clan, who were at a similar level. The cultivators of Eastern Deity Island would also occasionally ambush them. On top of that, Futian's ability had suddenly skyrocketed. He kept killing renhuangs from the June clan, making their decline apparent. Yun Mu, who was battling Shangguan Hong, had a somewhat sullen expression. Aura of the Great Path pressed down on them from the sky. He had a cold and indifferent look as he glanced at Shangguan Hong across from him. He said, Shangguan clan is also a force from the Prunglai continent. Is your clan planning to watch as Eastern Deity Island rises once again in the Prunglai continent? Eastern Deity Island has remained secluded for many years. Their ambitions are most likely grand. Shangguan Hong, are you willing to act as a pawn for them? Shangguan Hong remained unmoved. His expression was indifferent. Yinmu was trying to incite him. Both sides already had grudges with each other. Before knowing about Eastern Deity Island's stance, the Yun clan probably already had the idea of joining forces with the Jun clan and finding an opportunity to eradicate the Shangguan clan. Now, Yunmu's words made it seem as though Eastern Deity Island was their common enemy. Shangguan Hong clearly knew that they were not the enemy of Eastern Deity Island. He also knew the reason why Eastern Deity Island had been so reclusive. Moreover, if Eastern Deity Island truly had the ability to suppress the Prunglai continent, who could stand in their way? Even large forces could not do so. Now Shangguan Hong was merely going with the flow. Yinmu, why didn't you say this before? Shangguan Hong asked. Another furious attack crashed towards the other party, knocking Yinmu's body back. This caused Yinmu's gaze to turn extremely sullen. His will swept across the entire battlefield. Yi Futian was still continuing his massacre. An 8th-tier cultivator had fallen. If this continued, the Ren Huangs of the Jun clan would gradually be killed off, and the Jun clan would be utterly defeated. At that moment, a heavenly might suddenly descended from the sky above. Golden divine light rained down. Divine palaces appeared in the sky above. Among the divine palaces an elder stood. He looked down below. His aura was powerful beyond comparison. It was the Great Elder. The eyes of the cultivators of the Jun clan lit up when they saw who had arrived. Their ancestor had come. Jun Xiaoyao led the Jun clan. He was their current leader. However, the strongest person in the Jun clan was this Great Elder. After handing the Jun clan's management to Jun Xiaoyao, he no longer concerned himself with the matters of the Jun clan, leaving everything to Jun Xiaoyao. The Great Elder then went in seclusion to cultivate and train in his way. He was trying to break through to the next plane. Although he had not succeeded for many years, his cultivation was already at the pinnacle of the Renhuang plane. His abilities were terrifying. He was the behind-the-scenes figure of the Jun clan, the most powerful existence among them. During this moment of crisis, they never imagined that the Great Elder would appear. The cultivators of Eastern Deity Island and the Shangguan clan frowned when they sensed the terrifying aura. The ancestor of the Jun clan had arrived as well? His aura was terrifying. In an instant, the vast space was enveloped in a majestic power of the Great Path. The Great Elder of the Jun clan roared angrily. A heavenly might of the Great Path seemed to descend upon them, crashing towards the minds of the crowd. Many cultivators felt their blood and chi churn. Their own great paths were being suppressed. All battles on the battlefield came to a halt because of his cry. Shangguan Hong's expression also changed slightly. He had not imagined that this old fellow would come out from his seclusion, and that he had not died. On the contrary, his aura was so powerful. This would be somewhat troublesome. Supreme Deity Donglai perished many years ago. The current Prunglai continent is already not as it was before. Since Eastern Deity Island is not concerned with outside matters, why have you all come out of your seclusion? The Great Elder of Jun clan interrogated with a voice that contained the suppressive power of the Great Path. A heavenly might of the Great Path descended from the sky. The cultivators of Eastern Deity Island all frowned when they sensed the aura. They realized that no one here could stand against this Great Elder. As the Great Elder said this, he lifted his palm and pressed down on the space below. Instantly, it was as though the sky had collapsed. A gigantic divine palace plunged downwards. Everyone was covered by it. A few powerful cultivators released their own heavenly might of the Great Path to block the attack. However, their efforts were all suppressed and destroyed. They could not hold back the enemy's attack at all. The Prunglai continent indeed is not what it once was before. Even though Supreme Deity Donglai has perished for many years on the Prunglai continent, it is not your turn, old fellow, to act presumptuous, a cold, proud voice cried out. The words were barely uttered when an elegant figure emerged from the forces of Eastern Deity Island. appearing like a peerless empress. She took a step forward and immediately traversed the space, appearing before the other party. A sacred phoenix let out a long, loud screech. Illusions of phoenixes appeared all around them. At the same time, an extremely proud phoenix appeared. It spat out divine fire of the great path that melted everything in its path as it charged towards the great elder. Divine palaces circled the great elder, preventing the divine fire of the great path from touching him. However, the enormous sacred phoenix spat fire, and its flames flooded the space, enveloping the divine palace. The divine palace was immediately melted and destroyed. It was the divine fire of Wudong. The crowd looked at the divine fire. It was the divine fire that supreme deity Donglai had cultivated. It was very frightening, and was a destructive fire that would never extinguish. However, it was also an endless divine fire that nurtured all living things. What you say is not wrong. Since you have gone into seclusion to cultivate, stay there. You have managed to live for so long. Why come seek death now? The woman said as her hair fluttered in the wind. She appeared elegant and domineering. Her voice was authoritative. Under the ever-burning fire, the divine palaces were melted and destroyed little by little, causing the great elder of June clan to frown. This fire was approaching perfection. She was so powerful. The crowd was surprised when they saw this scene. The elder of the June clan might not be able to withstand the might of this fire. This great elder had an astonishing ability, but in the blink of an eye, he had been suppressed by someone else. Was she a flawless level Renhuang? Some people thought to themselves, that wasn't right. If she were a flawless level 9th tier Renhuang, she would be too powerful. The great elder of the June clan would not be able to put up a fight, and would be immediately killed off. She must have refined the divine fire of the great path, for her might to be so terrifying. Rumble. The great elder of the June clan had a cold look in his eyes. He was actually being suppressed by a little girl. He had lived for so long that even supreme deity Donglai was the same generation as him. Of course, even though they were members of the same generation, their statuses were different. Yet now the successor of supreme deity Donglai was pushing him around. Countless divine palaces circled them. A brilliant and majestic scene appeared in the sky above. He cried out loudly and raised his hand forward. The divine palaces that surrounded them immediately charged with unparalleled might in the direction of the eastern deity Island Lord. Yet at that moment, the Island Lord coldly snorted. A divine tree suddenly sprouted. It was a divine Wudong. It covered the sky and blocked out the sun. Each leaf contained the power of the divine fire. The entire divine Wudong was covered in flames that frenziedly spread. It blotted out the sky and immediately wrapped around the divine palaces charging down. The divine palaces suppressed everything as they attacked. Yet they were wrapped up in the branches and leaves of the ancient tree. The might of the divine palaces kept weakening. On top of that, the flames consumed the divine palaces, causing them to melt into nothingness before they managed to descend upon the Island Lord. Buzz. The Island Lord's fiery red phoenix robe danced in the wind as her hair fluttered in the breeze. The divine Wudong kept expanding outwards. Countless leaves flew out from the expanding divine tree. They swept towards the opponent's figure, becoming a frightening storm. In an instant, the leaves actually became the fiery red flame feathers of a phoenix. A divine phoenix appeared, and immediately enveloped the figure of the great elder of June clan. It spurted out flames that invaded the area where the great elder stood. The silhouette of the great elder flashed, and the divine palaces enveloped his figure. He wanted to charge out of this domain of the great path. However, as the phoenix spat out flames, the divine Wudong that covered the sky and blotted out the sun descended upon him. It swept over the space and completely sealed it off, forming an absolute domain of the divine fire of the great path. It wasn't going to end well for the great elder of the June clan. The cultivators watching this scene thought to themselves, this female Island Lord had powerful abilities. Her domain of the divine fire of the great path encapsulated her opponent. It was enough to kill him off. When the cultivators of the June clan saw this scene, they were extremely nervous. Many of them had pale expressions. If the great elder was burnt to death by the flames, what would happen then? June clan would be faced with a catastrophe. No one had imagined that Eastern Deity Island would be so dominant. This female island lord, the successor of Supreme Deity Donglai who had never revealed herself in public, was actually so powerful. The domain of the divine fire of the Great Path seemed to become ethereal. Within the domain, the great elder of the Jun clan was struggling. He wanted to charge his way out, but the divine wheel of the Great Path transformed from the divine Wudong, covered the sky, and formed an absolute domain. If he could not withstand the might of the fire, there was only one possible outcome: death. It seems I have indeed grown old. My Jun clan will surrender and leave. If we encounter the cultivators of Eastern Deity Island in the future, we will let you have the right of way. A voice called out from within the domain. The once domineering great elder of the Jun clan had begun to show signs of weakness in the blink of an eye. This voice caused the members of the Jun clan to feel their hearts turn cold. They seemed to understand what was happening. Are you dreaming? The Eastern Deity Island Lord replied indifferently. Her flames became even hotter. What does Island Lord want? The other party cried out, his voice changing slightly. Since you have come here, just stay here. The female Renhuang said in a voice that was still domineering. Not long after, there were miserable cries of agony. The other party's voice became even more anxious as he said, in the future, Jun clan is willing to follow the lead of Eastern Deity Island. There is no need. The reply he heard was still delivered with an icy tone. Very quickly, even more cries of agony filled the air. The cultivators of the Jun clan felt their hearts thumping nonstop. They seemed to have already seen their own end. If even the great elder was killed, how would they turn the tables? Among the crowd, Futian also looked towards Eastern Deity Island Lord. What he had witnessed today might still only be a fraction of Eastern Deity Island's ability. In reality, this large-scale battle did not give Eastern Deity Island much trouble. The fate of the Jun clan was already decided. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1946, Curtain Close. Chapter 1946. Curtain Close. Jun Shuyan felt as though his recent experiences had been somewhat surreal. He was previously the young master of the Jun clan, a top force of the Penglai continent. His status was astounding, and his talents were exceptional. He was also a powerful figure at the Renhuang Plain. In the entire Penglai continent, he could have his say. He had also made ample preparations for this journey to Eastern Deity Island. He had hoped to take this opportunity to come across fateful encounters of the Great Path on Eastern Deity Island to fortify and increase his own abilities. However, he had ended up in such a state. He himself was crippled, and his clan was almost about to face a catastrophe that would eradicate them. The Great Elder was being consumed by flames right now. The Great Elder's miserable screams of agony could be heard. This made his face turn as pale as ash. Was Jun clan's eradication all because he got them involved? Why was this happening? How could a lower-level Renhuang, whose cultivation was below Jun Shuyan's own, affect Jun clan's survival, a top force in the Penglai continent? Rumble. In the sky above, divine fire consumed everything. Countless leaves of the Wutong danced in the sky. When the leaves fluttered down to the ground, there was nothing left inside. The great elder of the Jun clan had completely disappeared. Only the beautiful island lord of Eastern Deity Island remained standing in the sky. Behind her, there was a gigantic illusion of the sacred phoenix that was one with the sky. Everything had ended. The appearance of the great elder of Jun clan had not only been unable to turn the tide of the battle, and he instead had drawn out the true ability of the female island lord of Eastern Deity Island. He was killed on the spot. There was no suspense left in this war. Gales blew, and countless leaves of the Wutong danced in the air. Each leaf contained the power of the divine fire of the Great Path, as they swept through vast space. In an instant, with her figure as the center, the entire world seemed to become scorching hot, seemingly consumed by the formless power of the divine fire of the Great Path. Retreat, Jun Xiaoyao ordered. He sensed that the divine fire of the Great Path was everywhere, and had already covered this part of the sky. There was nowhere to escape to unless they could restrict their opponent. Buzz! This part of the world seemed to be burning in flames. A gigantic shadow of the sacred phoenix appeared and descended from the sky. It consumed this part of the sky. The expressions of many renhuangs of the Jun clan changed drastically. They discovered that the power of the flames surrounded them. The renhuangs of the Jun clan rose into the sky at the same time as they attempted to retreat. However, right now it was already too late. In the sky above Eastern Deity Island Lord was like a peerless goddess. Endless light of the divine fire emanated from her figure. This part of the sky was completely on fire. Endless screams of agony could be heard. Here, Eastern Deity Island Lord was an uncontended existence. Even the great elder of Jun clan was immediately burnt to death by the divine fire of the Great Path. Who else could withstand the power of her Great Path? Many renhuangs were covered in divine flames. They appeared extremely miserable. Island Lord, have mercy! Someone cried out, begging for mercy. Even though they were powerful, when truly faced with death, they would still feel terror. Since you dared to bully my Eastern Deity Island, there is no meaning in begging now, a cold and indifferent voice stated in the sky. She initially did not want to fight, and let the members of the Penglai continent know her abilities clearly. She had merely been watching from the shadows. However, the Jun clan had charged over to kill them. Even the great elder of Jun clan had attacked. She had been forced to emerge from the forces of Eastern Deity Island. Jun clan and Yun clan dared to start the fight today. They must truly believe that her Eastern Deity Island was a pushover. Since that was the case, she had no qualms about killing them. On the battlefield, renhuangs let out cries of agony. Their bodies were burnt to dust in the divine fire of the Great Path, scattering to the winds. In a battle between cultivators at the peak, if the difference between abilities was sufficiently large, there was no possibility of escape. The weaker of the two could only await death. Island Lord, this matter is unrelated to our Yun clan. Since we were friends with the Jun clan, they invited us here. We had no intention of going against Eastern Deity Island. We hope Island Lord can forgive this trespass. Yun Mu also began to waver when he saw the renhuangs perishing one after another. It was not just the renhuangs of the Jun clan being slaughtered. Their Yin clan renhuangs were being killed off as well. If this continued, they would be completely wiped up and would all perish here. Since you have come here, stay, Eastern Deity Island Lord said indifferently. The divine fire of the Great Path continued to burn. Renhuangs continued to perish. At the same time, the cultivators of Eastern Deity Island also attacked. Thus a one-sided massacre began. Eastern Deity Island Lord controlled the entire field. The situation was completely lopsided. She's gone mad. In the distance, many members of the continent felt their hearts tremble as they witnessed this scene. Not long ago, they had sought after fateful encounters of the Great Path on Eastern Deity Island. However, this time, Eastern Deity Island had become cruel and merciless as they began their massacre. There were renhuangs perishing at every moment. For the cultivators who came from various continents, this was the first time most of them were witnessing such a horrifying scene. Renhuangs were being slaughtered in large droves like ants. Such a scene could only be encountered on the battlefield between renhuangs. Today, they had witnessed such a scene. On the battlefield, the number of renhuangs was diminishing. The cultivators of the Jun clan, as well as the Yun clan, were being killed off. As for Eastern Deity Island and Shangguan clan, they had almost no losses. Under such circumstances, it was a complete landslide massacre. Jun clan and Yun clan were finished. Many local cultivators of the Penglai continent lamented. Fate was a cruel mistress. The two overlord clans, who dominated the Penglai continent, had fallen just like that. They seemed to have forgotten who was the previous overlord of the Penglai continent. Shangguan clan had chosen the right side this time. They would probably have the chance to rise and become even stronger. They would also form ties with Eastern Deity Island. From the looks of it now, anyone could tell that Eastern Deity Island, which had not involved themselves with outside affairs for many years, was still the most powerful force in the Penglai continent. The young city lord of Wuxiang city of the Penglai continent was also among the crowd. There were also cultivators from Wuxiang City with him. They watched this scene emotionally. Two giant figures had perished just like that, and became history. Who knew how the situation in the Penglai continent would be like in the future? Would Eastern Deity Island directly interfere with the matters of the Penglai continent, and re-enter the sights of the world? As the battle continued, the number of cultivators of the two top forces grew fewer and fewer. Jun Xiaorao and Yin Mu had been surrounded. Eastern Deity Island Lord also attacked from the sky above, when she saw the two of them struggling. Very quickly, the two of them were injured and backed into a corner. Must it end like this? Jun Xiaoyao asked as he looked at the female Ren Huang in the sky. Cultivating was not easy. It was even more difficult to cultivate to his current level of cultivation. Yet everything was about to be for naught. Kill them. Eastern Deity Island Lord uttered these two words. She did not respond to Jun Xiaoyao. They had already reached this point. She naturally was not going to show mercy. A sacred phoenix descended upon them, attacking together with the elder. Very soon, Jun Xiaoyao could not withstand the attack anymore, and was burnt by the divine fire. Only Jun Xiuyan remained alive among the two top forces of the Penglai continent when the battle ended. The cultivators who came to join the battle had all been killed. Eastern Deity Island had not shown any mercy. When Jun Xiuyan saw the scene before him, he closed his eyes in pain. He then said, "Kill me then." Right now he was dead inside. He no longer had any desire to live. What meaning was there in living? Now, even his clan had been eradicated. Yi Futian walked up to Jun Xiuyan. Yi Futian did not take much pleasure in this ordeal. Before this, he had released Jun Xiuyan. Yi Futian had not been hypocritical. He truly did not want to be involved with the Jun clan anymore, and wanted to resolve the matter. Both sides could have just let go of the issue and not pursue it anymore. However, Yi Futian did not know what had happened on Eastern Deity Island for the Jun clan to clearly not agree to this. Hence, they had ended up where they were now. As Jun Xiuyan looked at the silhouette in front of him, he asked, "I want to ask you something. Why did Eastern Deity Island fight for you? Was it just because Yi Futian had extraordinary talent?" Jun Xiuyan still could not understand. Why did Eastern Deity Island, which had not been involved in outside affairs for many years, fight for Yi Futian and re-enter the sights of the world? Yi Futian pointed a finger at Jun Xiuyan. "Sword will immediately pierce forwards." With a dull groan, blood spurted out from Jun Xiuyan's glabella. His eyes grew dim, and he died. Jun Xiuyan's eyes were wide open. He did not die in peace. Yet, he was unworthy of the answer he wanted to hear. It was over. Such a storm had ended in such a cruel fashion. The cleanup was up next. "Many thanks, Island Lord." Yi Futian thanked the Island Lord as he lifted his head to look at her. No matter how he put it, he had relied on the other party this time. Otherwise, how could Yi Futian possibly deal with a ninth-tier existence? Him taking advantage of her forces this time was considered perfect. Of course, the other party had willingly cooperated. He was naturally aware of this point. Eastern Deity Island Lord was also secretly hinting this to him. "It is not over yet. Shangguan Hong, I will bring a few members to the Yun clan. Meanwhile, you bring some of your people to pay Jun clan a visit," the Island Lord instructed as she looked at Shangguan Hong. Next, they still had to tie up loose ends and eradicate any unknown risks. "Understood," Shangguan Hong replied as he nodded his head. "Are we leaving immediately?" Let's go now," Eastern Deity Island Lord answered. She swept a glance below and ordered, "Let's go." As she said this, a group of people traversed across the sky with her, heading to settle things with the Yun clan. "Let us also go," Shangguan Hong ordered. He led his group and left, heading towards the Jun clan. Those who saw this scene understood that these two major forces would completely be eradicated. Very soon, many cultivators left the place. Yi Futian quietly watched as everything happened. It was as though he was keeping out of things. It seemed as though all that had happened were unrelated to him. Even the attacks before this had not involved him. Eastern Deity Island had arranged everything. Or rather, the Island Lord had arranged all this. Some alchemy masters approached Yi Futian. They had long known about some of the abilities of Eastern Deity Island. They naturally looked down on the Jun clan and Yun clan. The two clans were just a mob, and they actually thought highly of themselves and dared to challenge Eastern Deity Island. It was suicidal for them to have done so. Now, everything had turned out just nice. Their dreams had burst like a bubble, and they had lost their lives. These matters are really uninteresting. Little friend Yi, let us head back and research how to refine pills, someone said. Yi Futian turned his head. He was speechless. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1947, Handover. Chapter 1947. Handover. The issue had come to a close. The storm that started because of an exchange finally ended with the elimination of two top forces of the Punglai continent. Many people lamented the end of these two clans. As expected, they had to remember this lesson and not be too full of themselves. Even until his death, Jun Shuyan most likely had never imagined that him acting condescending towards a lower-level Renhuang would actually result in such an end for himself. It was so embarrassing. The cultivators from various continents still did not leave. A senior figure from the Shangguan clan came to Yi Futian, with Shangguan Chuya following behind him. He smiled and said, I am Shangguan Yun, Chuya's uncle. I have heard that little friend Ye's talents are peerless, and that you are handsome and charming. Now that I have met you today, you are even more outstanding than I imagined. This Shangguan Yun had a cultivation at the 8th tier. He was indeed impressed with Yi Futian's performance. The new generation replaced the old one. In the battle, Yi Futian had yet to display his full abilities. Eastern Deity Island had helped him settle the issue. No one knew what level of combat ability this lower-level Renhuang truly had. Senior, you speak too highly of me, Yi Futian responded with a smile. Miss Shangguan also stands head and shoulders above others. Far from it, the middle-aged man answered with a smile. When we were talking about you before, this little girl Chuya admired you very much. She kept praising you in front of my elder brother, non-stop. My elder brother also wishes for her to learn more from little friend Yi in the future. My cultivation is still low. What could she possibly learn from me? Yi Futian replied. With such combat prowess, your level of cultivation does not matter. When you become an upper-level Renhuang, who could contend with you at the Renhuang plain? Shangguan Yun exclaimed. Chuya's father has headed over to Jun clan. When this whole incident is over, little friend Yi must come over to Shangguan clan and be our guest. If the opportunity arises, I certainly will, Yi Futian replied with a nod. Shangguan Chuya pouted her mouth as she heard the two of them exchange pleasantries. She had come to understand what sort of fellow this Yi Futian was while she was on Eastern Deity Island. One should never be fooled by his looks. This person was decisive. When he acted cruelly, he struck fear in people's hearts. Had Yi Futian not arranged the end of Jun clan every step of the way, this fellow might have already planned everything when he entered Eastern Deity Island. He might have planned to rely on Eastern Deity Island to eliminate the Jun clan. Of course, ordinary people couldn't persuade Eastern Deity Island to aid them. He had such qualifications, and Eastern Deity Island was willing to attack the Jun clan for him. Renhuang Ye's abilities are indeed unmatched, another person said as they walked over. It was the young city lord of Wuxiang City Lu Qing. Before this, on the chessboard, they were brutally pushed around. Now that he had witnessed Yi Futian's true combat ability, he was convinced. This fellow was truly terrifying. Yi Futian nodded at Lu Qing and replied, You are no slouch yourself. Far from it. Previously, I believed that the chess match held me back. Now I understand that if it weren't for the chessboard, I would have lost even more miserably. I would not even be qualified to have an exchange with you, Lu Qing said with a bitter smile. Before this, a group of Jun clan 7th tier cultivators had joined forces. They had all been instantly killed by Yi Futian. Lu Qing still knew his own strength. Yi Futian smiled but did not respond. When the difference between abilities was slight, one might feel dissatisfied. However, when the difference was insurmountable, people of the same generation as Yi Futian could only admire and be impressed by him. It was because they would not be able to surpass Yi Futian. If the opportunity arises, I hope I can ask Ren Huangyi for a few pointers, said the young city lord of Wuxiang City, Lu Qing. Yi Futian nodded his head slightly and said, "Sure." Lu Qing saluted with his fists and said, "May we meet again?" "May we meet again," Yi Futian replied with a nod. Lu Qing then turned to leave. The cultivators of Wuxiang City also left in a flash. They also needed to return. After this event, the situation in the Penglai continent would change. It was just that no one knew Eastern Deity Island's stance. If Eastern Deity Island wanted to dominate the Penglai continent, no other force would be able to stand against it. Not long after, news arrived from the Jun clan and Yun clan. "Let's head back," Yi Futian said as he turned to leave. He actually headed back in the direction of Eastern Deity Island. With the close of this incident, the hidden dangers of the outside world had been resolved and would no longer threaten the Dongyuan Pavilion. Beigong Ao and Emperor Helian followed Yi Futian. Many alchemy masters also joined him. Their eyes were exceptionally bright when they looked at Yi Futian. This fellow was a treasure. They needed to properly develop him and teach him to concoct pills. Though many of them would not necessarily be able to refine pills of a higher grade than Yi Futian. Nevertheless, Yi Futian still had enormous potential that could be extracted. He needed to be properly guided. When his cultivation increased, his attainments in refining pills would also increase. He would be a walking treasure trove in the future. When they saw Yi Futian's group leave, the cultivators from various continents and the Penglai continent in the distance also dispersed and left. This time, after returning to the continent and the Dongyuan Pavilion, I plan to follow Pavilion Master to cultivate once I have settled matters back home. What do you think? Beigong Ao said. He believed that following Yi Futian was even more precious than the position of Dongyuan Pavilion Master. Emperor Helian was stunned. His footsteps slowed down. Beigong Ao was already at the 8th tier now. He was the continent's top cultivator. It was natural for him to control the Dongyuan Pavilion. He was the top figure of the continent. What an honor that was. Emperor Helian was envious of Beigong Ao. Yet the other party had changed his mind and gave up all this. Beigong Ao was willing to follow Yi Futian and cultivate by his side. He was aware that by following Yi Futian, he was destined to be unknown. Many cultivators would certainly gather around Yi Futian. Yi Futian's own splendor was enough to outshine everyone around him. Forsaking the status of the top figure of the continent and following Yi Futian to cultivate was a bold move. Emperor Helian knew that Beigong Ao was a shrewd fellow. From the looks of it, he gave up being the top figure of the continent and the position of Dongyuan Pavilion Master in order to have the chance of witnessing the view from even higher places. Beigong Ao's ambitions were very grand. Emperor Helian felt that he himself was inferior to Beigong Ao. Yi Futian was also somewhat surprised at this. He looked at Beigong Ao. Although Yi Futian could faintly understand the stance of Eastern Deity Island now, Beigong Ao had followed him from the Dongyuan Pavilion and was more trustworthy. Having an 8th-tier cultivator beside him would make life much easier for him. In addition to Zifeng, Yi Futian would not need to attend to ordinary situations. "Are you serious?" Yi Futian asked. An 8th-tier cultivator was already a figure at the peak. Beigong Ao would be the top cultivator on the continent when he returned. "I am serious. I have considered this before," Beigong Ao replied. He smiled, seemingly very calm. "All right," Yi Futian answered, nodding his head. "It is just that there will be inconveniences for you, senior." "There won't be any inconveniences. I will return to settle matters in the Dongyuan Pavilion, as well as the matters of Yang clan," Beigong Ao said. Yang Dongqing had betrayed Yi Futian on Eastern Deity Island, conspiring with Jun Xiuyan, and was killed. The issue with the Yang clan naturally needed to be settled to prevent hidden dangers in the future. Yi Futian nodded. "You should head back to make arrangements first. Senior Helian will cultivate here for a period of time. When the time comes for the handover, Senior Helian shall inherit the position of Dongyuan Pavilion Master until you return." "That won't be a problem," Beigong Ao said as he nodded his head. He looked at Beigong Shuang and instructed, "You stay here and cultivate with Pavilion Master Yi." Beigong Shuang agreed, nodding her head. Emperor Helian, who was to the side, glanced at him. This old fox had not forgotten to arrange for his daughter to stay by Yi Futian's side. This scheming fellow. If Yi Futian did not have a partner already, this fellow would most likely want his daughter to pounce on Yi Futian directly. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1948, Seclusion. Chapter 1948. Seclusion. The situation in the Prunglai continent had changed. Two top clans had been destroyed. The top figures of Jun clan and Yun clan, two giant clans, had been wiped out. After that, the clans were cleaned off by various major and minor forces. Some forces had grudges with them, and others were taking advantage of the situation. There was never a lack of people who would add insult to injury in the world of cultivation. This was especially so for top clans with bountiful resources. There would naturally be people who would not let this chance to loot slip past. Overnight, the two top forces fell apart and joined the annals of history. This had all begun due to a simple conflict. Many people lamented over this incident. If the Jun clan was involved due to their junior Jun Xiuyan, it was worse for the Yun clan. They merely lacked foresight and got swept into a storm that they shouldn't have entered. From there, they faced annihilation. Who would have thought that it would end like this before? Yet this was the way of the world. Regardless of how big a storm was, it always began from a tiny incident. Just as many people were anticipating whether Eastern Deity Island would return to the Prunglai continent, the island lord led her cultivators back and was no longer heard of. It was as though she had never appeared at all and remained uninterested in the Prunglai continent. If the two forces had not angered them, Eastern Deity Island might not have emerged. Or rather, it should be said that everything happened because the two forces wanted to kill Yi Futian. Eastern Deity Island Lord had come out for the sake of that junior figure. Yet, the superior talent that Yi Futian displayed indeed astonished many and was unforgettable. The name of Dongyuan Pavilion Master, Yi Lionian, spread throughout the Prunglai continent. Many people visited the continent where the Dongyuan Pavilion was situated. They wanted to see what was so special about this person. However, when they reached the Dongyuan Pavilion and asked around, they discovered that Yi Futian was still a mystery. It was as though he had appeared from nowhere and became famous overnight. By chance, he obtained the position of Dongyuan Pavilion Master. This time, he had not returned, and had instead relinquished his position. Beigong Ao had returned to arrange the affairs of the Dongyuan Pavilion. After a period of time, everything began to gradually calm down. The cultivators from thousands of continents began to leave the Prunglai continent one by one. The number of people on Prunglai Deity Island gradually dwindled, and it returned to normal. The next time things would become so lively was most likely 10 years later. However, would a figure like Yi Lionian appear 10 years later? It would be difficult if not impossible. Many people speculated that Eastern Deity Island would bestow Goddess by Mu to Yi Futian to become his path companion, to make him stay and cultivate on Eastern Deity Island. They were all wondering, what was Yi Futian doing on Eastern Deity Island now? He should be enjoying various pills and working hard to improve his own cultivation. He might also be enjoying his time with the ladies. With such talents, Eastern Deity Island would certainly go all out to persuade him to stay. Right now, on Eastern Deity Island, in an alchemy area, Yi Futian's face was covered in dirt and grim. His face was black as though he had been burnt. His white robes had been stained black, and he was covered in weird smells. Where was his usual charm and temperament? He looked completely different from what the people outside imagined him to be. If they saw what Yi Futian looked like now, what would they think? Senior Helian, although this pill came out a bit ugly, please don't mind and don't waste it, Yi Futian said as he held up the pill he had just refined. Although the aura of the way emanated from the pill, it was hideous and had no sense of form or shape. It appeared very unappetizing. Emperor Helian grimaced as he weakly replied, Pavilion Master, I have already consumed many pills. I need time to digest them properly. We can save this pill for Baigong Ao. He has yet to savor Pavilion Master's pills. These past few days, Yi Futian had asked Emperor Helion to stay on Eastern Deity Island to cultivate. Emperor Helion had thought that he would be consuming elixirs and miraculous medicines all day long. Yet in reality, Yi Futian fed Emperor Helion his own refined elixirs every day. The color, smells, and tastes of these elixirs did not need to be mentioned. The pills Yi Futian refined were also varied. There were many grades, and some were even failures. Saying that they should not put the pills to waste, Yi Futian had fed them all to Emperor Helion. The dignified head of the Helion royal family had pitifully become a lab rat for Yi Futian to test his pills on. It was too miserable. Then Helion, you come and try it, Yi Futian ordered. I think these elixirs are best to be used on father. My cultivation is not high. These elixirs are way too nutritious for me. Helion Yu rejected softly. Yi Futian looked at Baigong Shuang, who was at the side. The latter looked back at him with an innocent gaze as she gently shook her head. It seems like everyone upholds the virtue of sharing, Yi Futian lamented. He glanced at Black Wind Condor, who was standing near him. When little Condor sensed Yi Futian's thought, he turned around and left. He knew nothing. Senior Helion, you have reached the bottleneck in terms of your cultivation. Yi Futian convinced Emperor Helion, saying, perhaps some meridians in your body are clogged. You need pills to help you with it. You don't have to be modest and decline it. In the end, Emperor Helion swallowed the pill reluctantly while putting on a long face. It was unhealthy to consume an excessive amount of pills. Moreover, Yi Futian had been feeding Emperor Helion with all sorts of pills non-stop. Masters, Yi Futian called out. The alchemy masters nearby, who had been pretending that they did not witness anything, shifted their gazes towards Yi Futian and asked, Lionian, do you have other orders? Yi Futian replied, fetch me more prescriptions and medicinal herbs. The more complicated the prescription, the better it is. It would be best if the recipe is for a bizarre pill. The corners of the alchemy master's mouths twitched as they heard his reply. They then nodded their heads and said, all right. Some of them left the place, thinking to themselves that this fellow was indeed a lunatic. Initially, they planned to slowly regulate Yi Futian's body through pills. However, he refused to be nursed and wanted to refine his own pills. Moreover, he only concocted high-level and complicated pills. It was no surprise that his success rate was very low. A fellow who had not even learned the fundamental skills for refining pills wanted to refine the finest pill. He expended alchemy materials here every day. They hated his lavishness, and even wondered whether or not asking him to stay was the right decision. Should they ask him to leave as soon as possible? If not, their precious materials would be picked clean by him. What made them even more speechless was that when they sought out Bai Mu, she did not look into the matter. When they asked Island Lord to talk to Yi Futian, to ask him to be thriftier, Island Lord told them to let him do as he pleased. What sort of situation was this? Had anyone learned to refine pills in such a manner? If this continued, the alchemy pavilion would be emptied. That was not all. The demonic beast raised by the fellow was also extremely excessive. The Black Wind Condor, who called himself Condor-sama, used the excuse that he helped his master collect spiritual herbs to ransack the herb garden daily. He had sneakily consumed countless precious herbs. The alchemy masters wanted to capture him and beat him up. However, the B*SD*RD actually found someone to support him. The descendant of Lord Phoenix could not be offended. A few months passed just like that. One day, a frightening aura spread across Eastern Deity Island. A storm of the Great Path pierced the heavens, and the weather of the world shifted. Many people lifted their heads and looked over in the direction of the source. Their wills swept out, seeking the source of the storm of the Great Path. They were somewhat moved. Someone was about to break through to the next plane. The person who was about to do so was the cultivator who had been testing pills for Yi Futian every day, Emperor Helion. Yi Futian, who was concocting pills, was stunned too. He walked out of the alchemy area and raised his head, gazing into the distance. His eyes revealed a glint of joy. Emperor Helion was no longer young, and his cultivation had been stuck on the same plane for a long time. Actually, even though most of the pills that Yi Futian fed Emperor Helian were low-level pills, many pills were prescriptive and compatible with Emperor Helian's life attributes. These pills would not directly affect the consumer, but they could strengthen the consumer's vigor. Vitality was the root of a person's cultivation. When a cultivator had exuberant vitality and a strong spirit, they would better comprehend the things around them. Yi Futian did not directly refine elixirs that Emperor Helian needed for his training. Instead, he approached it from another angle and strengthened Emperor Helian's foundation. This method was something Yi Futian learned from the memory of Supreme Deity Donglai. For the past few months, Emperor Helian had been reaping the pill's benefits while consuming them in pain. Now he had finally broken through to the next plane. This storm of the Great Path lasted for a long while. When Emperor Helian was done with his training, he came to meet Yi Futian. A satisfied smile could be seen on Emperor Helian's face. "Congratulations," Yi Futian said with a smile. "Many thanks." Emperor Helian bowed slightly at Yi Futian. He was over the moon to experience a breakthrough. However, as an 8th-tier existence, he was also well aware that his achievement was credited to Yi Futian's hard work. Emperor Helian had not expected that the torture he had suffered for the past few months would result in his breakthrough. "Senior broke through the next plane with your own effort. You don't have to thank me. Senior has endured a lot of hardships for the past few months." Yi Futian continued with a smile. "Since Senior has advanced to the next plane, you may return to the continent without any worries." Emperor Helian felt somewhat emotional too. At this moment, he could vaguely understand the thoughts of Beigong Ao. The idea of letting go of his past and following Yi Futian to train also surfaced in Emperor Helian's mind. "Why don't I also stay?" Emperor Helian suggested. "Senior Beigong has already said that the Dongyuan Pavilion also needs people. He is still waiting for Senior to return to take over things," Yi Futian interrupted. "The future is unpredictable if you follow me. There might even be danger. Senior is in charge of the royal family. It would be best for you to return." Emperor Helian nodded his head slightly. "Go then. Now that you have broken through to the next plane, I have no regrets," Yi Futian continued. Only then did Emperor Helian understand that Yi Futian had actually wanted him to break through to the next plane before letting him leave. Emperor Helian saluted Yi Futian with his fists again and said, "May we meet again." "May we meet again," Yi Futian replied as he nodded his head. "Let's go," Emperor Helian said to Helian Yu beside him. Helian Yu looked at Yi Futian, smiled and said, "I will be in the Dongyuan Pavilion, awaiting the day that your name reaches us." Yi Futian smiled. Helian Yu looked very highly upon his future. Emperor Helian left Eastern Deity Island. After some time, Beigong Ao returned. He had handed his responsibilities to his clansmen and had arranged all his matters. He then came to Eastern Deity Island and began a period of cultivation. It was also the same for Yi Futian. He went into seclusion on Eastern Deity Island. Aside from concocting pills, he trained and cultivated. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.